everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley. Welcome back to another video. Today we are taking a look at the differences between how Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, have approached their public platforms. We recently discussed the various ways that Catherine has really set a good example and positioned herself as a really positive role model. In contrast, Meghan Markle has not really shown us much good character, and despite her declarations that she is a role model, her actions don't really support that messaging. When you look at the impact that various members of the royal family have had, none really compare to Queen Elizabeth II. She was the longest reigning monarch in history, so she's really in a league of her own. For a long time, Princess Diana's legacy was sort of the bar for the younger generations who were marrying into the royal family. But then years later, Prince Harry and Prince William each got married, and their wives had the opportunity to make a strong impact of their own. And if you missed the video dedicated to Catherine's impact, I'll be sure to link it here as well as in the description box for you. But let's take a closer look comparing how the prince's wives used their platform and what sort of impact they've had. Because needless to say, they've taken very different approaches and had near opposite outcomes. But first, we must obviously address the fact that these two women were gearing up for very different roles. Within the working monarchy, they have very different futures laid out before them. Princess Catherine will become queen and is the mother to a future monarch. The same cannot be said for Meghan Markle. She was always going to be in a supporting role, no matter what. The Sussexes were never going to be quite as prominent as the heirs. That's obvious, but setting that aside, she still was in a position to have huge prominence. With a massive platform, the potential was there for her to become a really influential figure. By the time the brothers were getting married, things had really changed and evolved within the monarchy quite a bit. Upon Harry's engagement, the buzz was all about the Fab Four. Now the brothers and their wives were to be working in unison together to support, at the time, Queen Elizabeth, but also Prince Charles, now King Charles. And this was evident because at the time, Harry and Meghan were given more privileges, more engagements, more tours quicker than people expected. Additionally, Catherine isn't the only member of the royal family who does things well or takes the right approach to her duties. In fact, the majority of the working royals are exemplary. But for the purpose of this video, we are examining two individuals who married into the family, held senior working royal roles, and are of similar age groups. Therefore, this offers a more clear comparison in behavior and choices as compared to, say, Meghan versus Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, who married into the royal family in the 90s. So by looking at the contrast specifically between Catherine and Meghan, despite the differences in their position, we're able to pinpoint the various ways that they've utilized their public platforms in much different ways more clearly. It's important to note that Meghan didn't really give herself enough time in her role as part of the working royals to really demonstrate her character or values adequately, as she left shortly after joining. It felt even more brief because she also had maternity leave in there as well. But nevertheless, some elements did stand out in her approach at the time. Notably, she sometimes told people not to curtsy to her. The thought was that she wanted a more informal engagement or a more informal relationship with the people she was meeting. Oftentimes somebody who was kind of hosting or receiving her on behalf of a charity or organization or a venue. She even sometimes requested a hug instead. But this ended up creating a lot of confusion and awkward moments like this. It left the people who were greeting her unsure of what to do, sometimes confused or even more nervous, but also it kind of made the other people look bad. It made them look like they weren't following protocol or offering her the respect that people thought she should be getting at the time. So it really ended up being unfortunate for everybody. And perhaps if she had given it more time before sort of requesting this, people would have had the chance to get to know her a little bit more and understand more of what her intention was behind requesting people to hug instead of curtsy. But regardless, not everybody likes to hug, and protocol is best to be followed for a reason. It makes everybody more comfortable and lets things run more smoothly. Her sense of style was another way she attempted to carve out a space of her own and be unique within her role. She often seemed to want to present a more business formal dress. Because she came looking like she wanted to be more business formal, sometimes a little too formal for the event, it was in contrast to the sort of wrinkled or ill-fitting presentation that it had, so it was a bit muddled, the appearance that she was giving. It really came across as odd, and most of the time read as ill-prepared at best or disrespectful at worst. Both of these ladies married princes and attended many similar engagements and events, things like Commonwealth Day or Trooping the Colour, as well as visits to charities and organizations, and their fashion choices for such events differed a great deal, which made it all the more obvious when Meghan Markle made a faux pas. Because we did have direct comparisons to somebody in a similar position holding almost identical events or attending the exact same event who came across a lot more polished and stylish at the same time. The point is, it wasn't just a question of different taste, it was ultimately a question of execution. Prince Philip was famously keen to remind those within the royal family to never think it's about you. It's about the role, the office, the monarchy as a whole. It's not about you as a person or individual. And this is something that Meghan Markle never seemed to grasp or learn, as evidenced by her frequent attention-grabbing tendencies. In her speeches, she tends to reference herself more than anyone or anything else. Any given charity or organization that she was giving a speech at, even now, still is not referenced as often as she references herself. She also often appears as though she's more concerned with getting a certain picture or getting a good angle in a picture or where her position in the picture will be or how she looks, as opposed to actually interacting with the people she's there to speak with. And outside of events, she spends a lot of time speaking about herself in various interviews, podcasts, etc. In fact, it was one of the main gripes people had about archetypes. There was too much time of the host talking about themselves and offering personal anecdotes, and not enough about the actual interesting guests she was there to interview. In contrast, Catherine rarely talks about herself, and she seems to be wholly present when she is interacting with people. We can see a pattern where Catherine does understand her role is about giving her platform to valuable conversations, while Meghan erroneously appears to believe that the platform was hers to use in her own benefit. Furthermore, there's lots of examples of Meghan having clearly not read the brief before events. When she was with the royal family, every member, before an event, an engagement, attending any sort of a thing, you're given a dossier or a briefing of the organization, the people you are likely to meet, the people in charge of it, and what they are doing, what's important about it, so that you go in there kind of knowing the realm a little bit. When going on tour, you're given information on the cultural norms, customs, ways to dress, how they greet each other, things of that nature. Now, since they're no longer a part of the royal family, who knows how detailed briefings may or may not be, or whether or not there are any for Harry and Meghan now. But when she was with the royal family, it was clear she didn't always read these briefs. Even down to outfit choices. She often ignored suggested color schemes or requests to wear hats or tights. This on its own may have been excused for an adjustment period, but it went beyond that. And with the royal family, she had a few blunders attributed to not having studied with the engagements or organizations ahead of time. And it continues today, where she didn't take the time to learn about the customs of a place she was visiting beforehand. By not educating herself on charities or places before getting involved or attending, she doesn't only look ill-prepared, but it comes off as disrespectful to the event and often fake. And that's what really lends itself to people thinking Meghan really only attends things as a photo opportunity, because she learns nothing about it or what they're doing before she shows up. She just shows up, gets the pictures, and then uses them in an Archewell post later. In part 1, we discussed Catherine's willingness to try things and engage in sports or play, and how that has boosted her relatability, in part because she's actually having fun in those scenarios. Meghan, on the other hand, rarely, if ever, partakes in athletic activities. She isn't sporty. And that's okay. Not everyone is, and who can blame someone for not wanting to try their hand at making a soccer goal or playing volleyball if they truly know that they are not good at it? that would be embarrassing for anybody. But that doesn't mean that she couldn't find other ways to interact with organizations, charities, and people and still have fun doing so. Things like art, crafts, gardening, cooking, sports, these build bridges in these sorts of situations to where you can be doing an activity you enjoy and have practice at and feel at least somewhat confident in, like, say, cooking, alongside other people who also enjoy it and have an interest in cooking. And supporting charities and organizations in that setting can be a great way to have fun while doing some philanthropic or charitable work. If there were true passions of Meghan's, then she could find organizations that allow her to join activities of that sort, and she could enjoy it alongside others, which would provide more fun. By not having outlets that she enjoys, her engagements as a royal and her visits now don't really look like a good time. It doesn't look like she's having fun, and that does inhibit her relatability factor. It's also prevented her from being recognized as a respected patron of things or a respected supporter of things, because she not only seems to not know much about certain charities or causes that she speaks on or claims to support, but she also doesn't look like she's having a good time while she's there. It doesn't really inspire people to view these organizations in a positive light, because the visits often look boring and lackluster without genuine smiles and fun. On the other hand, Catherine looking like she's actually having fun and genuinely enjoying doing arts and crafts with kids or engaging in sport gets people excited and inspired to join in as well. While one of Catherine's most likable characteristics is that she is so family-oriented, the same cannot be said for Meghan Markle. Her rocky family of origin story has completely gotten away from her and become a beast of its own, and she and Harry's self-exile from the royal family have given the impression that she doesn't really value the family unit, especially when the rest of Harold's family is regularly seen in public and is a very unified, supportive, joyous-looking family. It definitely drives the point home that Harry and Meghan are the problem each time the royal family is seen at major events like Trooping the Colour, for example, recently. One could argue that not all families are perfect, and family disputes and whatnot, who are we to judge from the outside, things like that. In which case, you would think perhaps then they are more friendship-oriented. The you can make your own family types, which is a wonderful thing. Not everyone has a close-knit, healthy family dynamic with their wider family circles. And building lasting friendships is really advantageous. It provides a needed support network and that outlet of more familial-like relationships. But the Meg is notorious for discarding friends. In the description box, you'll find various videos linked that show examples of this and have dissected this issue in the past. But in short, Meghan doesn't have a network of long-time friendships. She has shorter-term friendships that then the people have spoken out and said, I have never heard from her again, basically was discarded by the Meg at any given point when that person was no longer of use to her or when she felt she had upgraded out of that friendship. If she had various long-term friendships, a network of close-knit friends that we could see time and time again over the decades, ones that had not been discarded or used for various reasons, could indicate good character despite family turmoil. But instead, it looks like Meghan discards both family and friends, which is not an example that anyone would be inspired to follow. One of the ways Catherine has set a good example is indeed how quiet she is in terms of personal information and statements. Today, with social media such a huge part of our lives, people have become very self-focused to the point that it's not always healthy. Oversharing and hyper-focusing on every little feeling and thought too much of the time tends to do more harm than good, especially when it comes to mental and emotional health, and social media really promotes that. And unfortunately, Meghan Markle has actually set an example of doing just that. On the other hand, most mental health professionals agree that being more outward focused is a great way to improve overall well-being and mental emotional well-being. Getting off social media, Thinking about other things or other people, doing things in the real world is much better for you rather than being stuck in your head, fixated on problems or disagreements or complaints, similar to rumination. And many could argue what Harry and Meghan have been doing the last few years is ruminating on things they were dissatisfied with. Unfortunately, this is just another example where Catherine has demonstrated through her actions, not words, a positive behavior, while Meghan has shown an unhealthy example to the world. Continuing to repeat your problems and blame others for your problems is not a healthy example. That's not to be confused with speaking up about problems and issues. Talking about real issues can be a positive, especially when time and thought is dedicated to finding and funding real solutions. However, with Meghan Markle, we hit another roadblock here. The issues that Meghan has spoken on over the years, she either provides no examples or evidence of the issue actually having occurred, or she isn't part of the solution conversations, or it's so extremely vague, it's not really a cause anybody can get behind. For example, when she accused people of racism, the only example was a run-of-the-mill, completely not racist, familial, happy pondering of what their future kids may look like. When she retells her dish soap commercial story, the aim and point of the story appears to be, if we were to try to find a purpose of this story, a moral to the story, it would appear to be to encourage people to listen to women or not marginalize them in some way, shape, or form. It's really far too vague of an idea and sort of an outdated issue at this point, one that doesn't really have any sort of clear target. I challenge you to leave in the comments an issue or a cause that the Meg campaigns to solve and the solutions she supports for it, because I can't quite pinpoint any. On the other hand, Catherine has clear objectives. For example, with the Early Years Project, she has encouraged businesses to find ways to become more family-friendly by, for example, offering equal parenting leave and publicizing Parenting Out Loud, an organization that focuses on fatherhood and creating cultural change that benefits dads. What that means is, for example, opening lines of communication with workplaces on family commitments. Because studies found, I believe it was 1 in 3 dads don't really feel comfortable talking with their bosses or their coworkers about their family commitments when it comes to perhaps needing to stay home to take care of a sick kid or needing certain days off here and there to accommodate family responsibilities in terms of child rearing specifically. Providing coaching is another element to this, amongst others. These are just a few of the many solutions that Catherine has contributed to, brought awareness to, and supported through her Early Years initiative, which is focused on improving birth to age 5 for all children. This is one of my absolute favorite things that she has done because it is so important and so very real. As a mom myself, I have spent countless hours researching these exact same issues, and she is on track with every single point of this. Another benefit to this is that if you go to the Early Years website, literally all these initiatives and all these conversations that are really important to be had, all these ideas, possible solutions to investigate for yourself and for your communities are all in one place, backed up by actual data. The point is here just how much we know about this initiative and how clear it is. Her mission is obvious and the results are clear. We have nothing even close to this from Meghan or Harry. So in terms of philanthropy and advocacy, it's just nowhere near on the same level. The platform of anyone in the royal family or adjacent to it, the way Meghan Markle is quite unmatched. It's frustrating for some to have watched Meghan Markle and Prince Harry waste the opportunity. Ultimately, they continue to place themselves in public view and tell us with their words and their Archwell posts that they're philanthropists and showing up and doing good. Meghan Markle even went so far as to tell us that she is a role model. But the public hasn't been able to see that at all. Their actions do not support this at all. There's no evidence of real advocacy or hardly even good character on the part of these people. This is part of what makes people view Harry and Meghan so harshly. They say one thing and do the other, or they want the titles of being philanthropists and doing good, or they want the reputation of a philanthropist without actually doing any real work or moving any specific issues forward. It's very unclear what their goals and targets are, what their aims really are. They want their image to be one thing, but cannot back it up and do not practice what they preach. And this is in stark contrast to, for example, the early years project with Catherine, but also many other members of the royal family. We can see very similar situations to Catherine's, where it's very clear what their aim is and what progress has been made and what solutions are being supported. Ultimately, when I look objectively at Meghan Markle's impact thus far, taking Meghan out of the equation and just saying this person and what they've done and what they've said, her impact is actually quite negative. I cannot think of a positive cultural impact that she has had. And I'm being objective here. If there is a positive, I will call it out. She and Harry accepted, bought awards and various interviews based on their speaking out against racism. But there's no evidence of racism, and the only claim they had to it simply cannot be categorized as such. So she's not a champion of this issue because it was exaggerated at best and fabricated at worst. Furthermore, there have been no conversations of solutions or an ongoing arc to this journey of advocating against racism. It's just not something she has taken on as a cause, and good thing, because it was all based off a lie. Additionally, Meghan hasn't really found any sort of successes on her own merit either. Not as an author or podcaster or producer or actor, and prospects for hosting and creating products aren't really looking great either. So she hasn't really set an example of quality work or any sort of intellectual or talent-based successes either. That could perhaps inspire people to get out there and make something of themselves the way certain business people or inventors or, for example, Martha Stewart, Ina Garten, these ladies built something for themselves that was of value and that brought them success and contributed positively to culture. Meghan hasn't really done that either. Finding your way to meeting up with a prince and marrying him isn't exactly setting an example for young girls to aspire to. Neither can we say feminism is her goal or her target or something of a cause she's supporting, because that's not really a cause in and of itself, and her references to it, as I've said before, are quite outdated. Things about mothers not being well represented in culture isn't really a realistic issue any longer. Now more than ever, mothers are represented in social media and online and in various platforms in a very realistic way. And access to support for mothers and advocacy for mothers and resources and education has expanded its availability and access to a greater population more than ever before. So she doesn't really have a feminism-based cause that she's behind either. It's all just really vague and loose. Ultimately, her impact really seems to be stuck in drama. She's created drama, she's stirred it up, everywhere she's gone. She has the ability to take something really mundane and turn it into a really big, overblown, dramatic problem. But that is not a good example. That is not something you want to be doing or you want your children to be learning to do either. That's a bad thing. Unfortunately, at this point, her image is really wrapped up in negativity and complaining. And there really isn't any substance behind her endeavors that people could get behind themselves and cheer on and say, well, at least I can support this, that, or the other thing. She hasn't exuded role model energy. A lot of Sussex critics get branded as haters, people who will find fault in every little thing Meghan Markle does, no matter how good it may be. A group of people who will never praise Meghan just out of spite or dislike, or are simply tearing another person or woman down. But this really ignores the history of this issue or the big picture of it ultimately. What are Harry and Meghan bringing to the table? What is their value? This is the critical question for them at this point. And more importantly, we cannot ignore the fact that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry entered into their independent era by tearing down other people. by criticizing and painting in a bad light, exaggerating, fabricating, but ultimately speaking negatively about other people. They criticized, teared down, and were negative about Queen Elizabeth II, King Charles, Queen Camilla, Prince William, Princess Catherine, specific members of staff who work for the monarchy or within the palace walls, as well as journalists and just generally the public and culture of Great Britain, which is just absurd. To come after and be negative about an entire group of people sounds a lot like prejudice to me. Harry even has spoken cruelly about a disabled teacher he once had at school. Harry and Meghan have come after people who did not deserve it countless times. Meghan Markle set out on a complaint campaign that was largely, if not completely, fabricated. And that, combined with the lack of substance, is what people are criticizing. It's not Harry and Meghan just because. It's Harry and Meghan because of what they've done and who they appear to be. So when it comes to that role model energy, it's not just some blind, biased, Catherine's a role model, Catherine will be praised, and Meghan will not be, and Meghan is bad, boo. That is oversimplifying the issue in an extreme and egregious manner. Meghan Markle has not demonstrated through her actions or her words good character, role model, worthy vibes, in really any category. When it comes to how she presents herself, how she interacts with others, the actions she takes, successes she has or has not had, the list could go on. We cannot pinpoint any specific area where she is leading through example or being a leader. And really what we can see is questionable choices, a negative viewpoint on things, and an unproductive approach that puts other people's mental health and well-being at risk. What do you think? Please leave your thoughts and comments below. I'm sure it'll be an interesting discussion. I truly hope that today's video was one you enjoyed and found at least somewhat fun or interesting to watch. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye!